In this series, Lowimpact.org talks with people working to build a mutually owned, democratic, decentralised economy that builds community and doesn't destroy nature. We want to increase collaboration to bring about system change. Find links to the sites mentioned in the videos in the description below. Join the conversation by liking, commenting and subscribing to our channel.
Physically together, yeah.
In Spain.
In Spain, it's in the Navarra region. I'm gonna be traveling there next month and just meeting with the communities and getting it's somewhere between 20 and 40 people together to play the game. I think bigger than that's going to be too much. And this is really a simulation. You know, I come from the software business, and usually what happens is software people, they build some great thing and then they try it out. I'm trying it out and then I'm going to start building.
Right.
So basically we're building
So it is a software-based solution. Your solution is a software-based solution. Yes. Okay.
Yes, it's a software-based simulation. And one of the things that I'm doing that's a little bit easier on me is that only a community can use it. So you could imagine like the purchasing manager will be using it. So it might be 1 or 2 people in the community are using it on behalf of 10 or 100 people in a community.
Yeah.
So it's a software system.
And do you register what you've provided or consumed?
Yeah, so I'll explain so I'll explain the flow, and I'll explain the game, and the game is the same flow. So we're going to get there and we'll have little name tags and we'll have a little bit of fun, and we'll say, okay, I'm the eco village. We'll be like, I'm the whatever, I'm the produce factory, and we're a cooperative, and we're a social economy, and we aren't a social economy, we're just whatever, we're the organic farmers over here, we're just a regular farm, it's not a whatever community-based farm. And we'll have our little labels and our little cards, which again, I'm interviewing people to make these, you could call them playing cards. Just like in a role-playing game, you have your little card of who you are, and oh, here's my attributes and here's what I can do. And we would go together with the intention of having a swap. You could call it a swap. And there's really 2 kinds of interactions. One is really a swap. It's like, oh, I got these pumpkins, I got to give them away. You know what? I need some, I need to, I want to make a compostable toilet at my eco village. Are you a builder? Can you make a compostable toilet? Yes. Well, what have you got in return? Well,
that's hard though, isn't it? That's hard. That's hard to find somebody who wants what you've got and has got what you want.
I'm still explaining the game.
Okay.
So, yeah. And so you may be able to find a swap. You might find a third party for your swap. Or you might just say, you know what, I know you're pretty good. I've looked at your reputation. I know you always pay it forward. Because between me and you, we can remember we've got even, right? But if I had a dashboard that would say, this community, they're pretty good. Look, these are all the things they gave away over, and their reputation is for generosity, and that because generosity, openness to the community, all of those things will be there. And be like, you know what, I trust you, you'll pay it forward. I'm just gonna, I'll build the compostable toilet for you. You'll give me vegetables this year, but I see that you've been a good community member. Not only that, look, we're all environmental here. If you've got a compostable toilet, that means you're not going to the sewage treatment plant. That means you're regenerating the earth, and I live next door. Of course, I'll help you with that. Right? Because there's a very different value being exchanged here. It's like, yeah, I'll help you with your compostable toilets, but next year when my truck breaks down, I know I can call you up.
So if you have a co-op that produces, I don't know, furniture, and your co-op that would just then provide furniture for free into the community, in the knowledge that other people in the community will be providing things for you.
Maybe, and maybe you'll say, look, I'll do that for you, and you'll pay me. Maybe you don't have anything. I'm not banning you from using money. You could use money. You could say, I'll sell you the furniture, right? You could say, I'll sell you the furniture at a 10% discount because you're in the group. You'd be like, fine. Now, at the end of the interaction, though, the thing, it's not the money, but the currency that we're tracking is your reputation. So let's just say you sold me some furniture at the regular price because we've never worked before, and you're like, look, I don't believe in any of this stuff. I'm in the system, but these are my prices, man. I'd be like, fine. I rate you not very generous. I rate you really high quality furniture, extremely professional, detail oriented, not ecological or yes, whatever, 7 on a scale of 1 to 10 for ecological. Now everybody knows that's your reputation, and they have a choice to work with you. And another furniture builder moves into town, and they have a higher ecological and generosity rating. But you're like, you know what? I know I don't have a great generosity rating. So there's a second kind of interaction that happens in this group. One is transaction, but another thing that's very common, it's common everywhere, but here in particular, I was told this is a very common thing, which is a community activity. We're going to clean up the river. We're going to plant some trees. We're going to do whatever it is, right? We're going to, we're going to help, we're going to do and deliver food to some poor people on the weekends or whatever it is. We're going to renovate the retirement home, right? And so people put out calls for volunteers and then they go there. And that's not transactional at all, but is value created in that thing? Of course, value is created. So we all went down to help renovate the retirement home, and all 10 communities, let's call it, were invited. These 3 didn't even show up. It's like, all right, whatever. They didn't show up, and they always don't show up. You could rate them on not showing up again.
Yeah.
Right? These guys, the entire community showed up. All 10 of them showed up. Okay, it was the people with disabilities. They didn't do a huge amount of work, but they all showed up and they were generous and they brought some pies. And, so they were disorganized. They're not the most industrious workers, and they got a reputation, not industrious, incredibly generous, great pies, great food, right? So they get a reputation for showing up. In our community, let's say my community, a few people showed up, they worked hard, they went home, okay, industrious showed up, whatever, generous, 7 for the generous scale, and we rate them. Those guys showed up, they sat around all day, but they brought the drugs, a different rating.
So would you say it's could be described as an ecosystem of payment systems with online reputation?
No. It's an ecosystem of reputation.
It's an ecosystem of reputation.
For measuring the actual value and values of communities.
Right.
And it's oblivious to whether you use economic money. You could use money, right? But for this system where I was talking about renovating, we all went and we renovated the house of the retirement home. There was no money exchanged. So well, maybe somebody brought the paint, right? Maybe somebody brought some stuff. Maybe somebody donated. But mostly it was not an economic transaction at all.
So you could possibly label it as a type of gift economy?
I would call it sharing.
Sharing.
I'm going to sneeze. And that usually happens 2 or 3 times. So that may happen because they come in groups. So it's a sharing economy, but it's really interesting in this conversation with you, because you keep going back to money and transactions and finance, and it's like you can't imagine gift. It's a gift.
No, not money. Because you know that my head is in a mutual credit.
I consider that money. I consider mutual credit to be money.
So I'm talking about mutual credit in terms of recording who's done what. That's all. Just recording who's done what.
No.
But that's how I'm just saying that's how I look at it.
Oh, okay.
It's like,
So first of all, it's not who, it's which community. It's which community. It's never an individual. Now imagine the different dynamics of that, right? If you go out and you know that you're representing your town and you're in a crappy mood today, but you know that if you act nasty, your entire town or village or company, right? It's like you go to work, right? And you've got to sell something for the company. You've got to put on your best face because the entire group is going to be damaged if you're in a crappy mood that day. Now, if it's an understanding community, you're like, look, I'm in a really bad mood today. I'm in a really bad way, man. And then everybody understands, like, okay, Dave came, he was in a bad way, but he came anyway. Maybe that ups your reputation. We know he just went through a hard time, or he's still recovering from COVID and he came anyway. Man, what a great guy, whatever it is, right? So you can bring you know that your reputation belongs to the whole. That's why it's a vouch group. Because I know if I misbehave, my whole group is going to pay for it, or they're going to rehabilitate me, or they're going to kick me out. And that's also how companies work. It's like, we sent the plumber over there, or the electrician. He didn't do a good job. That's our problem. We send somebody else to fix it. And so as a group reputation, so it's a group to group reputation, and you know that.
I've got some questions.
Yes.
I want to see your ideas in action. I'm very interested.
Come in May to the game.
I might. I think it's everything you've said has really attracted me, and I really want to see it in action. What about, you're talking about interacting with the rest of your community through a group, not as an individual? What about if you just want to be a sole trader, if you want to be self-employed? Can you?
I do not think that will happen at the beginning. I think that might be 2 or 3 years down the road.
Right. So you're not banning self-employed people.
I'm not banning it, but what you would have to do is join a group of mutual vouch.
Yeah.
And that might be, we're all electricians and we vouch for each other's work and we give each other ratings of each other's work and we make sure that it works. And we're not a company, we don't have a shared economy, but we vouch for each other. And if somebody's not good, we do kick him out.
Yeah, like a little guild.
It's a little guild, yeah, it's right. I've used the word guilds. And that could be anything. And you know, the guilds, you could imagine the guild having a reputation, right?
Yeah, of course.
You could say, and they might say they let anybody in. It doesn't mean anything. Sometimes they send somebody good, sometimes they send somebody bad, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And the guild, the other thing about the reputation is really interesting, is this guild protects you from your customer giving you a reputation. So let's say you and I are in the same guild and we vouch for each other and we give each other a rating, like Dave's the best guy in our group and, you know, whatever, John is the second best guy and Grace is the third best guy. And we decide how to do that rating. And let's say you come back from a client and they say he did a crap job, and we go and we send somebody out to fix it. We're like, don't worry, we'll send somebody out to fix it. We go there and like, oh God, they were assholes. Dave's still the best guy in our group, right? We can protect your reputation as a guild. Now, if we BS it, of course, they'll be like, yeah, they say everybody's good. But if they're like, no, if they said that, right, the guild knows that we have a guild reputation. And so people, you know, so we know, or we might say, Dave, you really didn't do a good job, man. What's going on with you? And we put you second in line because you didn't do a good job. But as the guild, we get to decide, were those guys out of line or not? So it's kind of a protection, and you get to join whatever guilds. And you can imagine that over time, we all belong to multiple guilds, right?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the things you're saying it sounds to me very similar to our mutual credit club's idea. You're in a mutual credit club. If you don't play the game, you can't be in the club. It's like you have to be a decent person. You have to provide proper services, and you have to, you know.
Yeah, I think it's right, and
very similar.
And and the chamas at grassroots economics is similar, right? We all vouch for each other.
Yeah, the chamas.
And in mutual credit, I mean, you know, this is true, right? And when it comes to settlements, money disappears, right? Yeah. Because at mutual credit, as happens less, but even in mutual credit, some people accumulate more because whatever, they're more profitable or better at business or whatever. And
but there are limits. You can't accumulate more than you have to stay within certain limits. So you have to find ways to buy if you've sold too much, or you have to find ways to sell if you've bought too much.
You're saying this, but this is not the reality. You got to get in touch with the reality. I was talking to Tomasz Fleischman about the reality. Okay. The reality is some businesses go bankrupt and some people die. In fact, all people die eventually.
Of course, yeah.
Right. Now, if they die with a profit, and this is not true in mutual credit so much, but if they die with a profit, they give it to their heirs. And if they die with a debt, it dies with them. Okay?
Yeah.
If a business goes bankrupt, their debt gets erased somewhere. So, and everywhere, every monetary system will end up in that way. And so if you have a chama or a group or a vouch group, you have to forgive some debt.
Yeah.
Right? And
it has to be absorbed. It has to be absorbed by the network rather than one person taking a hit.
The network gets to decide. And if you belong in a mutual vouch group, there has to be accounting for that, because money disappears sometimes. Right? And like you said, if people accumulate too much, you can say, this guy's accumulate. Look, if you're talking about a group of people and they're mutually caring about each other, they sit down every 6 months, they're like, Dave is the richest guy in the group. What are we going to do? And he's like, all right, and you can see that in tribal places, people would, you know, throw a big party for everybody. You've got to throw a big party for everybody. You can't be richer than
a potlatch, and you give your stuff away.
And you give your stuff away. And, you know, that's it. You have to account for that in your mutual vouch groups. One of the things that our current monetary system has done poorly is by bureaucracy, right? We're going to give you welfare by bureaucracy, and you fill out some forms and blah, blah, blah. And there's no relatedness to the person or the group who's in debt or having a problem, or the person who's overly rich, right? And so we tried to scale that through bureaucracy, and I think that's wrong. I think how you're looking at it and how I'm looking at it is the right way. It's like you belong to a community. The community has a social network in it. It could be that you belong to a larger nation state, and the nation state says, per community, we help you out, et cetera, based on this and this and this. But the community itself has to distribute that on the individual level. Otherwise, you really do get free riders, and you do get a situation where it's better to be unemployed and get unemployment than to work. That has to be local. We've really seen the failures of social distribution by bureaucracy. And I do like these groups that you're talking about, these clubs, because the clubs can say, you know what, Dave has to give more of his stuff away.
And
the problem with that is obvious, though.
Go on.
The people who are the best and charge the most don't want to be in the freaking club.
Why
I
not?
can tell you, I don't, right? If I'm a freelancer, like I have some friends who are, data art is a really great example. And I love data art. It's a DAO. And they're trying to create a system where the artists would support one another. And I said, well, the problem is, and they may get there and they may not get there. They haven't gotten to this problem. Let's say one of the artists in their guild becomes really famous and starts bringing in a lot of money. And all the other artists are starving artists. This is a pretty common thing. In fact, that's how the art world works, right? There's a few very famous people who are selling a painting of nothing for $15,000 and other people who are selling, just making paintings, right? Now, what happens if your group that is a mutual vouch group, one person starts being that famous artist? To what degree they want to share now? For how long do they want to share? After 5 years, do they say, look, guys, I'm the only one bringing in money?
It's quite marginal. I mean, people becoming famous artists is quite marginal. I mean, I'm talking about sort of, little local community.
No, but it's true of anybody. Let's just say I'm the best writer, the best freelancer, which I am, right? I am the top writer in the ICO white paper world. And I charge more than a lot of other places, and I write very quickly. Why would I personally, I mean, I'm not the super richest, right? But why would I want to share with somebody else if I'm better? Let's say I work in a company.
You're talking about your ideas about sharing them. From a mutual credit perspective, they're just racking up their credits. That's fine.
Right, but what the hell am I going to do with them?
Everybody's going to need food and shelter and clothes and furniture.
Right, but I can't. Right, yeah, but in a mutual credit system, I can't accumulate those as savings to buy a college degree. I can't.
Right. So this is where use credit obligations comes in. This is a whole other conversation, but it's basically.
Right. But you can understand where that kind of, when you start sharing in a mutual credit system, when you get to the end of the year and one person keeps earning a lot more than everybody else in the club, he's going to want to leave because he'd rather do well in the monetary system because he happens.
I guess I would let them go. I'd let them go.
Right, I understand, but then you always end up with a system of weaker people.
Not necessarily. I mean, I'm not talking about weak or strong. I'm talking about where do I want to get my food from? I want to get my food from as locally as possible, keep the supply chain short, support my local community, get quality food from people I trust. And if somebody, in the food business, nobody's going to be, suddenly becoming a mutual credit billionaire. It just can't happen. It's just a record of who's done what. And I'm still going to support my local smallholders.
It may work, right? It may work. It may work. I'm not saying it won't. And my system is very different because in my system, this is a great conversation, right? To compare the systems. In my system, we've got the food producers, right? And the food producer just sharing within the community. And the food producers are the most important person in the community. The food producers, the plumbers, the people who have essential services, the solar farm, right? Those are the most important people, and they're sharing with everybody else. Now, if you were in a group, you'd be like, and we've got some surplus energy. And then the group gets to say, well, the surplus energy that you've got is thanks to the food producers who've been giving you food. And so when we sell this surplus energy, does it belong to all of our communities, the 10 of us, or does it belong to you, the solar energy producer? And the groups can decide. They can say, look, we're going to take a 10% tax on anybody who's making a profit in our community groups. It's a tax. So if you're the solar, let's say you're the solar energy people and you produce too much energy for our whatever, let's say it's 20 communities who've banded together. We've decided that any profit belongs to the group that makes the profit minus 10%, because we're supporting each other with food, we're supporting each other with plumbers, we're supporting each other with whatever it is, right? Housing. The people who have the solar plant are actually living in the housing at this community over here, et cetera, and sending their children to the kindergarten over there. And so they have to pay whatever that tax is. Is it all of their money, or is it 10% of their money, or something in between? That's a different question. And then the beauty of the system is, and that's taxes, but the beauty of the system is you can have a problem together, right? Right now, if I have a problem as a company, my truck broke down, I have a problem. If I'm in a sharing group of 10 organizations and my truck broke down and we've been sharing that truck, now we have a problem together. And then the community can say, oh, well, the solar plant has a lot of extra money. And we can say, yeah, well, but the high school has been teaching the kids mechanics. Let's teach the kids to be mechanics, and let's get old parts, and it's more ecological, and let's rebuild something instead of buying a truck. It's very different for 20 communities or 10, to have a fleet of 3 trucks than it is for those trucks to be individually owned. And then it's an individual problem versus a group problem. And that's where I see this system being very different, because everything that I'm going to call it like the sufficiency line. There's like a sufficiency line. Everything underneath the line gets shared. Food, plumbing, electricity, education, health. Anything above the line, hey, massages, books, well, maybe that falls into education, whatever it is, that beautiful globe you've got back there,
luxury
art
items,
projects, luxury item, anything. It's not exactly luxury, but anything up here, you can trade with money, right? Anything down here, we make sure everybody who lives here eats. Everybody who lives here eats.
Yeah,
we got some extra food. We got some, whatever it is, wine.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily, people like to share their wine for obvious reasons, but we can sell the wine. Now, this pool on the top of money could be individual or shared. But now if we have a problem over here, we're looking at the next year and we're like, we don't have enough grain. We don't have enough grain for all the people. Are we going to plant some more potatoes? Are we going to plant some more grain? Are we going to buy some grain with some of our shared money?
So this kind of community resilience is the thing that really attracts me about your ideas. I think it's really vital. And I'm really, well, I mean, what's your ambition? Are you seeing this being translated and replicated in lots of other communities? I mean, what about parts of the world that are not so well served by co-ops and eco-villages, and which is most of the world, really? How do you get into those kind of communities?
So first of all, I don't know what you mean by well served. You mean they don't have them yet?
They don't have them, yeah.
Yeah, we need to have them, right? And you have pointed to that. Even your system is like, we're going to have clubs and grassroots economics. We use chamas. We think they're essential.
Yeah.
We actually can see that they are an essential thing.
Yeah.
How you organize those groups is going to be different. And as I was hinting, you could join a group. You could just say, me and my 10 mates are creating a group. We're going to call it the Buddies Group. And the Buddies Group is going to vouch for each other. And we're going to do odd jobs. Or we're just going to hold a community beach cleanup because we don't have any reputation yet, and we need to make a good reputation with everybody. We're going to have a party. We'll have a party. We'll invite the other communities over. It'll be a good party, and then we'll start to accumulate reputation. Unlike money, reputation can be accumulated from nothing. I'm having a meeting with you, and we are not exchanging any money, just so people know. Dave's not charging me for the publicity. I'm not charging him for my time. And we're both creating reputation. We're creating value, and you don't need anything to start. And that's really interesting thing about my accounting. My long-term vision is that this will be one of the components or a step towards technologies that will replace money.
Yeah. And you see
what will they look like? I don't know. But this is a first step. You
see it as a part of an ecosystem of different currencies and the different money or moneyless trading, or
yeah, I see this as it. If you could imagine, let's say the sufficiency line, right? The number of people under the sufficiency line, anybody who knows, for example, I'm taken care of. if I get disabled, I'm taken care of. If if I die, my kids are taken care of. I don't have to worry about that. I've got my health, I've got my food, I've got my whatever. I'm not going to be rich, but I'm taken care of as long as I put in my 30 hours a week or whatever it is my community requires, right? I've got free time up here. And if I'm the best artisan, let's say I'm the best wrought iron artisan, and really I don't, they don't need me more than this many hours for my sufficiency. Up here, I could help anybody. It could be an international community. It could be anything. I can release my own intellectual property. Let's say I've got some designs, 3D printing designs or wrought iron, beautiful designs. I could release them to anybody because I don't worry. I'm not worried about my legacy, keeping my money to myself, keeping my intellectual property. I'm taken care of. Somebody's taking care of me. And so all of a sudden, a lot of free information, for example, all the intellectual property becomes kind of free because what do I care? I can share. My free time, I want to, whatever it is, I want to go out there and make the town more beautiful with my art and leave a legacy. And I don't have to worry about my well-being. And all of that becomes sort of closer to Star Trek world, where and in a reputational system, you get a job. I mean, in some ways, I think we may end up, it's hard to know, but it does look like we're ending up in a world where less labor is required of people for that sufficiency level. And then what do you do with the extra labor? Well, you've got pride, you've got prizes, you've got, I want my art to live on, you've got, I want to contribute to some other community, you've got, I want to travel and I've got this skill. And so you get an economy in which you're taken care of. And as long as you walk around with your voucher that says, look, I'm in good standing with my community, maybe you can stay at the other community, right? Let's say we've all got a hotel in our community, and anybody who shows that they're in good standing with one of the communities that shares our values, because now I can tell who shares our values. Oh, you share my values, you can stay at our hotel. The example I give is I'm a Jew, and I wanted to go to synagogue at the high holiday services. And in another town where they sell tickets for the services, quite expensive. But I showed up, I said, okay, my rabbi says I'm in good standing and I paid my membership dues and they gave me a seat. Not the best seat, not the front seat, right? But they gave me a seat based on I'm in good standing in my synagogue, you get a seat at our synagogue. And you could see that being for instead of Airbnb's, couch surfing is that, right? Oh, you've got a good reputation on couch surfing. Couch surfing more or less disappeared when Airbnb came along. But you could imagine something like, okay, in our community, we have a hotel. And if you're a member of our community, you have to give, 2 weeks a year in service to the hotel. And then you get your in good standing certificate and you can go stay at hotels in other cities. And that's our rule in our community.
Yeah. I want to see.
Right. A sharing, so I think that a digital system like that with interoperable reputations and something like a in good standing is a really important thing, because it doesn't mean, much other than we know you've done your share. And everybody could, and it's in good standing with an ecological community, or in good standing with the social enterprise, or in good standing with an online digital community. Like, you know what, we can't give you a room if all you've got is in good standing with digital communities. You can pay for the hotel at our place, right? We could have that kind of reputational system where I can see your reputation and the reputation of the community that gave you the certificate, whether they're aligned with our values. And if they're aligned with our values, hey, we have a system in our place, in our community. You can stay for 3 days for free. If you're going to stay for 7 days, you have to cook dinner twice. And if you want to stay for 30 days, you have to give 10 hours a week, right? We could have all kinds of systems in place that were much more values oriented and gift oriented, because we're all taken care of.
I want to see your ideas in operation. I really want to see them happening in the real world and seeing if they grow. I think there's lots of overlap. It sounds as though there's lots of overlap with the mutual credit world. It really does.
There does. One of the things that I'm not doing is dealing with any type of monetary transaction in terms of creating something. And in my system, you can write down when let's say there's like a purchase, you could call it a purchase order, right? Dave's going to give me some furniture. I'm going to give him some vegetables and some money. What kind of money? I can write it in there. It could be euros, it could be pounds, it could be bitcoins, it could be mutual credit currency, it could be Wesco, it could be whatever. I'm not saying that because there are many alternatives. And so these communities get to choice. And that's just one of the lines in the purchase agreement between us.
Yeah.
Right.
It's and I mean, I really like your the community-based approach. It's not reliant on the state to do anything. I think the state is too wrapped up with the banks and corporations to really be useful to the kind of things that we'd like to see.
Well, I think again, it's really an evolutionary process. We as human beings started with family and then tribe. And we got sophisticated enough to have larger villages, to have city states at different times in history, you know, larger and larger organizations. And then we have nation states, fairly new in the history of humankind. And the next thing will be something above the nation state. And it's not exactly above, but it's like what I'm talking to. You don't think about my circulatory system as above my body.
No.
Or above my organs. It's like I've got organs and then I've got a circulatory system. Hierarchically, my circulatory system is made up of organs, so there is a hierarchy there. But it's not like my circulatory system is above my respiratory system or my reproductive system or my digestive system, right? Like these are systems that live alongside one another. And I think that we're going to see humanity evolve into these layered systems. And this is just one layer that I think it's the beginning of a layer. Right? Of what are those layered systems going to look like? And they're going to live side by side. But I do think that nation state has outlived its usefulness. And I think we have very good evidence, right? We had a global crisis over the last 2.5 years and utter failure to deal with it properly. And I know because people are still getting infected with this virus, right? I'm not saying it's a failure because, you know, I'm just saying empirically, it was a failure to control this virus. And nation states were just not up to the task.
No, and if one nation state decides that they're not going to chase perpetual GDP growth because it's damaging to the environment, then they're going to lose out in the sort of global capitalist game. And they'll, you know, whichever government brings that sort of policy in will lose the next election. And so we're locked into this system really via the nation state system. So
it's a bit worse than what you're saying, right? If one nation, I live in the former Yugoslav Republic, so we have a perspective that it's a bit worse than that, right? If you don't want to be into this system, there are a number of ways in which the system will get you.
Yeah.
The simplest way is airdrop some rice. We're just going to airdrop food into your poor country and destroy the local food market.
Yeah. And
pretty soon you'll be in the capitalist system. But the other way is, you know, we'll send in our armies one way or the other. Don't worry. We're going to, you know what we're going to do? We've got a system for you. It's called the Belt and Road system. Don't worry. We'll build everything. We'll give you a loan. So it's not that you're going to lose at the capitalist system. Don't worry. It will come get you in a multitude of ways. Military is the most extreme, but it's usually not necessary. We just build you some nice roads and give you some loans. We build a port for you. You need a port and an airport. Don't worry. We'll build that for you. We'll loan you some money.
I'm very interested in solutions that lie outside that kind of system. Very, very interesting. So I'd like to report on. I'd like to report on what you're up to in future. I'd like to interview you in a year or two and say, okay, what have you done? Where are you at? And I hope you be growing.
Yeah, I think the basic timeline for me is to do this activity in May. That's the next thing, which is a 2-day activity, and raise money. We're looking for about €1.5 million, we think, for the development. Take about 6 months for the development, and then a 1-year pilot implementation. So if all goes well, about a year from now, I will have some information about the pilot implementation that we're doing.
How can people get involved or help in any way?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of building up this community. Obviously, if people know of foundations or private donors who are interested in future money, you know, investment in research, it's really research, it's not profit, right? Investment in this kind of research, happy to send them my way. You can look at dowleadership.com or voiceofhumanity.one, which are my websites. We're going to be instating the game on Tuesday evening, so you can just play iterations online and have a fun time. And
Starting when?
I think in 2 weeks, maybe next week. But we're
Okay,
we're
so-
ready to play the game now, so it'll probably be on Tuesday evenings. We're working on doing this on a online platform on Topia or something like that. But it's
Okay,
still
give me some links in a minute. I'll put some links in the description below.
all right. I'll give you some links once I've got them, and then we'll be having regular sessions, and you can hang out with us.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right then, Grace. It's been fantastic talking with you.
Super interesting, and I really do hope that both of our projects move forward and we can integrate with one another and do all kinds of cool
Thank
stuff.
you. That's the integration I'm really interested in, to see an ecosystem of different kinds of currencies instead of being reliant on fiat and the nation state.